Welcome to Act 2 You're On. Join us weekly at our studio roundtable as Rhonda, Kate, and Linda invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy. Launch your next great act with authenticity and purpose.
Summon your courage, superstar, and step into the limelight. So grab a coffee
or a martini,
and let's set the stage for a grand entrance. It's Act 2.
You're on.
Greetings, friends. I'm Linda Ty, and I have the great pleasure of podcasting today with my two co-hosts,
Rhonda Garvin-Conaway.
And I'm Kate Levy, and we are also joined by our talented producers, Susan Nagel and Kathy Carswell.
So today we are very excited to have Michael Whitehouse here. I'm thrilled to talk to Michael. I've known him in the past. We worked together, actually. But first, I just want to say to our listeners, let me ask you this, because the old saying is, right, time is money. Would you like to learn how to be a more effective networker in a very short amount of time? Do you ever think, I would love to have a toolbox of strategies and exercises to help me clarify my values and specify my goals? You are going to love this conversation with Michael today. Michael Whitehouse has a treasure chest of resources from his vast network and a broad business background. This means that after you have clarified where you are trying to go and what you are meant to do, Michael has the resources to guide you in the right direction to start going there. So let me give you a little bit of background. Michael Whitehouse is the guy who knows a guy. I love that name, by the way. I think it's fabulous. He is a connector, mindset coach, a motivational speaker. Over the years, he worked a variety of jobs in sales and other fields, but his true Act 2, if you will, happened during the pandemic. The COVID pandemic gave him the push to finally follow his calling to help people live their best lives. Through his morning motivation podcast, his books, including The Guy Who Knows a Guy, and his coaching, he helps people to use the 3 pillars of values, vision, and gratitude to share their greatness with the world. As Michael says, it's all about connecting with people and finding a way to be of benefit to them. By focusing on what you can give rather than what you can get, Michael's been able to create something quite spectacular. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And we would love to hear about that. Our podcast is about people reinventing, making those transitions. So what made you make this? I mean, this is bold, what you're doing. This is so bold, and you just went for it. So I'd love to hear about that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I was like this in the bio, because I'm like, wow, that guy sounds great. I can't wait to meet him. Oh, that's me. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that. It's funny. You go through life and you keep accumulating experience and credentials, and you're like, I've got a lot of stuff, which I imagine is probably a lot of what your podcast is about, talking to those people who've been out there for 20, 30 years. And that's the people I like to work with the best, the ones who have been in maybe the corporate world or just sort of spinning their wheels for a couple decades. And now they're thinking, well, I guess I only have experience in this one field, not realizing they have related experiences to 20 other things. But yeah, so I made the transition, as you said, in the pandemic. And I'm not sure I'd say Act 2, it might be like Act 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Actually, I launched a game store straight out of college. And that was kind of Act 1. And then I went from there into sales and sort of wandered the business world. And then came the pandemic, and it forced me to do the thing I really should have done years ago, which was build my own business, because the business I had, I was a community publisher, which actually, of course, Linda, how we met. Mm-hmm. And that became untenable without in-person networking. That's where most of my business was coming from. And my coaching started to pick up. And I said, well, looks like I should do the thing I've always wanted to do. I guess if I have to follow my calling, I guess I can do that. And for the last year and a half, it's been a lot of exploration, a lot of meeting people. I estimate I've done 500 or 600 one-to-ones over the last year, including podcast interviews on the Guy Who Knows a Guy podcast. And the amount that I've learned from all these people, between mindset concepts and marketing concepts and technologies and tools and resources, has been really exciting and tremendous. And the biggest challenge has been figuring out what my focus is, who my audience is, what the offer is. I've got a pile of resources, and the challenge, I think this is a challenge for a lot of people. They have this pile of assets. Who do they serve? How do you put it into a package? How do you make that be something? So it's been a very evolutionary process. And what I've discovered is the person I can most serve is someone who's in my position, where they've got that pile of assets and they know they can help someone, but they're not quite sure how or what the tools are that they need and all that. So I bring all that together. I finally got frustrated trying to build a course or a program, which always has to have a specific outcome. I said, you know what? I'm just going to launch a program called the Inner Circle, and you pay to get access to me. You can bring your challenges to a live Zoom call, and I will answer them. And I'll just go into whatever in the bucket I need, bring the whole treasure chest. And because I haven't structured it, I'm starting it out as a $47 a month program, which I know is way too cheap, but I don't have the marketing built around it. So it's like a rocket ship in a plain brown paper wrapper, because I just want to start helping people. And then I'll figure out how to package it and make it a high ticket program and all that stuff later. But right now I just want to kind of get out there and start doing things for people.
We love your platform, this idea of connection, especially during the last few years. We realize connection is everything. And connecting and thinking first, how do I help? What's the benefit? How do I help the people I'm connecting with? I think that's a little different. And so how has that helped you be successful, which clearly you have been, and a little bit different from the connectors and influencers out there?
Well, I think that the big thing about it, the whole the giver's gain concept is from Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI. And it's the idea of you go into a networking space, a networking mission to give, because if everyone goes to give, everyone's going to gain. But if everyone goes to take, nobody gets anything. That's where you have those. And we've probably all been to that chamber event where it's all salespeople trying to sell to each other. And none of them are buyers. They're all sellers. And there's nothing happens from that. But if everyone goes in saying, what can I give? What can I share? What can I introduce? The power of that is that people are willing to take your call if you're there to give and exchange, who are not willing to take your call if you're there to take. And that's how on my podcast, I've interviewed about roughly, I don't ask for a balance statement before I talk to them, but I think a dozen or so millionaires, and they're perfectly happy to talk to me and share their advice and share their wisdom and experience. And for a podcast, okay, they're trying to self-promote, but I've had plenty of people who've been happy to get on a call with me, just me, for 30, 60 minutes, just sharing their advice. And I know these are $2,000 an hour coaches, but successful people love to share as long as you're not trying to take from them. And if they understand something beneficial can come of this, I'm going to appreciate their help me. And I'm thinking, all right, how can I help this guy? Who can I introduce them to? Who else can I help? And the powerful thing, so I think a lot of people out there say, well, I don't have a network. I don't know anybody. You have, as soon as you start trying to network, you have a network. It happened early on in my networking life that I went to a Chamber of Commerce event and I didn't know anyone in the room. I hardly knew anyone in the county. I talked to the first person. The first person was a realtor. Second person, I don't remember, not relevant to the story. Third person, I said, who are you trying to meet? Who would you like to connect with? They said, well, really, I need to connect with realtors. I said, do you know that realtor over there? They said, no, I've never met them. Well, come on over. I knew 3 people in the room. I connected the third one to the first one. And the same thing happens once I started connecting with these high-end coaches, these successful business people, is I could talk to the third one and say, hey, do you know this guy? I've interviewed my podcast here. You can check out the episode, listen to a story. If you like, I'll introduce you. And now suddenly I'm punching above my weight because I'm introducing this person up here to this person up here. And now they're appreciating. They're like, wow, you're really a connector there. I may only know the 3 of them or the 2 of them, but I'm connecting the one to the other. And now they're thinking, how can I return this favor? How can I help out? It's not about saying I'm going to give because I expect you to give back. It's more about I'm going to give because I expect it to come back. And if everyone thinks that way, then everyone ends up better off.
Nice. I love that. And something else you said earlier, Michael, is about that 5th act. I think that really resonates for people. That is the human experience, right? We're constantly in a state of change more than we are not changing. And the other piece that's so informative for us that you mentioned is how we tap into resources. Now, you've mentioned you're a coach. I know as a coach that's a vital resource in people's lives, but I think there are many who don't know about coaching. So could you enlighten us on what does that mean to be a coach and how that might be a beneficial resource for people in their world?
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the challenges is that coach means about 36 different things. So if people are confused, it's not because they're not savvy in business. It's because they may have met 4 coaches who meant the word to mean different things. Some people, they say coach, but they mean trainer. Some people say coach and they mean mentor. Some people say coach. And honestly, I don't use it 100% I think the truest, the International Coaching Federation definition.
Yes.
Because the quintessential coach is more like the Freudian therapist who comes in and draws forth your wisdom from yourself, doesn't give any advice, asks a series of questions to walk you down a path. That's more of a transformational coach. I'm trained in that tool set, but that's not primarily what I do. But a coach is someone who helps you to be your best self and move down your road. Now, this could be there could be the pure transformational type coach who does it all through drawing out your own answers and asking questions and developing your mindset. And it's all kind of within to unlock your potential. Sometimes you have specific coach, like a marketing coach, which is more of a marketing strategist very often, but they'll call themselves a coach because that's the cool word. And that's more of a technical person. They're developing your marketing strategy and they're doing this and that. And then the challenge for someone who's new in business is they say, oh, I have a coach, but their coach is a marketing coach, or their coach is a financial coach, or their coach is a tactician, not someone at the strategy level or even the higher level. So, and when I talk to really successful people, they'll tell me they have 5, 6, 10, 12 coaches. So there's certainly no, I have a coach. You could say your coaching budget is spent. I don't have any more money to spend on a coach, but there's all kinds of different things you can use a coach for. And what the space I'm trying to move into is sort of the general coach, the sideline coach, because what I've found lacking is most of them tend to be specialists. Specialists tend to be where the money is, just like with a doctor. A general practitioner makes less than a cardiologist or a neurologist or brain surgeon or whatever. And same with the coach. If you're a marketing coach and you've zeroed in on you do this exact part of marketing, you make more money than I help people build their business generally. But what I think the need is, when I was getting started in this, I hired a couple of coaches, but they were very specific. And so great, I got this very specific tactical skill, but I didn't know who my avatar was. I didn't know who my target was. I didn't know what I was offering. I didn't have a program, but I could build a great email list. And so I was really good at this one very specific skill, but I didn't have the rest of the big picture. So what I'm trying to do with my inner circle and my coaching is to kind of be that sideline coach who someone can come to me and say, okay, so I found this coach. They seem really great. Here's their program. Should I do it? And I can ask questions like, what will that do for you? What is your big picture goal? What's going to, what are you going to get when you complete that course? And then they realize, oh yeah, I need to plug this, and this in to get that. And so, a coach is vital. It is nearly impossible to be successful without a coach or a mentor, which is often a mentor is a coach who works for free. Someone who's a friend or they're in the industry or whatever. But without someone to guide you to simply trial and error your way to success is a very long and expensive road. And that's actually a point I want to make. Is some people say, oh, I can't afford a coach. A coach might be, depending on the coach, $300, $500, $1,000 a month. Some are, $2,000 a month. And they might say, oh, I can't afford $500 a month for a coach. That's too expensive. Well, can you afford to spend $30,000 through trial and error to figure it out? I can't afford a marketing coach, but you can afford $1,000 a month on Facebook ads that don't work. It's cheaper to hire a marketing expert than to experiment it yourself, because they already experimented. They've already burned $50,000 on things that don't work, so they can get to the things that do work. And same thing with the coach is that generalist coach like me or someone who does what I do at a few $100s a month can save you thousands on buying the wrong programs and hiring the wrong people and going down blind alleys. And it's way less expensive to hire a coach who can tell you, I think at the end of the road, you will find an alligator. Instead of walking down the road yourself for 6 months and then finding the alligator yourself, to have the coach say, there's an alligator at the end of that road. I've been down that. I know 3 other people have been down that. And you can walk down it, but you should probably walk down this other road that does not contain an alligator at the end. That's prices both in time and money.
Well, this conversation already is so chock full of wisdom. I'm learning a ton. This is great for our listeners, great for us. I've heard you say that you interview people to learn stuff. That's what we feel like too. Mm-hmm. It's a benefit to our audience for sure, but we just feel so grateful to have these amazing conversations. So what stuff have you learned? So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about your podcast, The Guy Who Knows a Guy, which is just the greatest title. You're in season 3. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I have 2 podcasts. One is the Morning Motivation podcast at morningmotivation.fun, which is a quick hit of motivation, which I made it to put into a slot that people aren't already using, that 2 to 5 minutes in the morning to wake up. But the Guy Who Knows a Guy podcast, my more in-depth podcast where I do the interviews. And season 1 was about showing off my network. I'm the guy who knows a guy. Let me bring people on here. I brought the president of the local bank, the local police chief, all these people that say, wow, you're so well connected. Look at your guests. Season 2, I was running a conference last year and I wanted to show off the guests we're going to have at the conference. And so that was season 2. And then season 3, I went to Strategic Alliance Live. I met all these 7-8 figure business people. And I said, they're doing something. I mean, they're smart. I'm probably as smart as they are, but they're further down the road. I want to know what they're not secrets, but what they did. Why don't I do a podcast? So, because I'm sure they'd tell me, they'd get on the phone and tell me, but why don't I record it and share it with people? So that's what season 3 is about, is finding successful people, bringing them on the show and saying, how'd you do it? What was your story? And the biggest thing I've discovered, the through line through all of them, is mindset. That so many of the stories, the pivot point is a mindset shift. They changed their internal identity. They changed how they saw themselves. Now, sometimes the mindset shift was hitting rock bottom. A surprising number of the millionaires and successful people I've interviewed on my podcast talk about considering suicide, attempting suicide, getting to that point where they hit rock bottom. Because when you get to that point, you throw away all your assumptions. If you're willing to swallow a bottle of pills, well, quitting your job and starting a business doesn't seem like quite as big a step anymore. And so I think for a lot of people, we put these limitations. Oh, I can't quit my job. Oh, I can't make cold calls. Oh, I can't, network. I can't write a book. I can't do a podcast. I can't. And once you hit that point where you're willing to do something truly reckless, truly over the top, and you're like, well, starting a podcast doesn't really seem that shocking anymore. I guess I can probably figure out how to make that one work now. But for me, they didn't get to that point, but there was some point at which they said, enough is enough. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, and not all of them, but that was kind of the main thing that I found, is getting out of their own way, throwing out all the assumptions, being willing to do something truly new. And the other one was discovering that the seeds of your superpower are often in your greatest weakness. So whatever you're worst at, whatever, like, that's holding me back, look there. And in that, you'll find, so for me, for example, it's lack of focus. As you may have noticed, I'm kind of over here and over there, as a friend of mine says, squirreling out. And so keeping, I've never had a regular corporate job. I don't think I've ever held a job for more than 3 years. So I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm meeting these people, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. And I always thought, like, oh, this is holding me back. And then I realized that's why I've met with 2,000 entrepreneurs, experts, and authorities and learned from them. And now I've got this encyclopedic knowledge, which someone said encyclopedic. I'm like, that's perfect, because I have everything in my head, no more than 3 paragraphs on anything. Just like the encyclopedia. I have just 3 paragraphs on everything. We just got a dog. I'm not a dog person. I don't know anything about, well, I don't want to say I don't know anything. I've never had a dog. I never expected to get a dog. My wife wanted a dog, so we got a dog. I took her for a walk the first time. And I knew, from having met with dog trainers and talked to people about dogs, I knew how to manage a dog on a leash for the first time I'd ever done it with a 103-pound dog, because 3 paragraphs about everything in my head, including how to manage a dog. So now I can deploy what had been a weakness, being unfocused and squirreling all over the place, as a strength. I can be a coach, and whatever you're coming up against, I've heard of it. I've seen it. I think I've heard that story at some point. And so no matter what they're saying, people have to say, oh, you probably don't understand this, but here's my situation. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I totally know about that. Yeah, absolutely. And people bring up the most, because also I look like a boring old white guy, right? People look at me and they probably don't look at me and say, I bet that guy was a director of Rocky Horror Picture Show cast, but I was. I bet that guy owned a game store. No. But I've got all these different things in my background. I have all these connections to the Renaissance Fair community. I have all these different things that you wouldn't expect, because I've been a squirrel running everywhere for 20 years. So for your listeners, whatever did you think is holding you back? Oh, I've only worked in the corporate world for the same company for 20 years. Okay, well, how can that be a strength? I was a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. Well, how can that be a strength? Because you learn something. In fact, if you were a stay-at-home mom for 20 years, you probably have more people skills than most Harvard-educated managers because you can handle children, which is a really valuable skill in managing a team. Because your team is just older children.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Absolutely. I really like that you are talking about this, Michael. I love the encyclopedia with 3 paragraphs on every topic, because I think a lot of us feel that way. And I certainly have felt that way. Whenever people ask me about my background, I feel a little bit of embarrassment. And I say my new word is it's eclectic, because I haven't stayed in one place, because I have lots of interests and things are very interesting. So it feels like a weakness. Now it's really wonderful to hear you and confirming to hear you say that actually that can be a strength. And it means that, you can be a good networker and you have lots of skills. And I like the way you talk about having that arsenal of knowledge and skills. And, what would you say to the person who does have all that? And then they have this like little, but I would really like to do this, but I'm not really sure that I can. How do you take that first step forward and have the confidence to do that?
So the first question I always ask someone, because usually it starts with, I'm here and don't like it. Not where they want to be, but where they don't want to be. So I always ask them, if money were no object, what would you do? And it's almost never, well, I just live in the mountains. Like, people still want to do something. If you're stressed out enough, you want to not do something for a while, but then you decompress. So what would you do the rest of your life if money was no object? And the answer to that is where you need to go. Now, the answer to that could be something crazy like, I want to ride dragons. Okay, well, there's no dragons, so you can't ride them. Sorry to disappoint anyone who thinks the dragons are real. But whatever it is, if you say, I really want to do X, imagine it's possible and now work it backwards. So if you really want to, if you've always wanted to be a hairstylist, okay, imagine it's possible, picture what that life would look like, and now work backwards. What would it take to get there from here? And what you often realize is, I just have to, go to school or meet with these people, or because the other thing to remember is almost anything you want to do, someone on earth has the power to make it happen. I want to launch a tech company. It would take $20 million to launch it. Okay, well, all you need is someone with $20 million. And so then you're thinking, okay, I need to find someone with $20 million. I need to give them a reason to give me their $20 million. It's that simple and that complicated. But I think we often think like, I don't have 20 million. Of course you don't have $20 million. Nobody who started a tech company has the money. Now, often they have some money because they need to get on planes and fly to meet people and whatnot. But I interviewed a real estate investor named David Haberfeld on my podcast. And one thing he pointed out is everyone knows someone with money. I don't care who you are, where you live. You could live in maybe if you live in a poor village in New Guinea, you might not know anyone with money. But if you're anywhere if you're within the sound of my voice, you know someone with money. It might be your boss. It might be your neighbor. It might be your landlord. It might be your teacher's spouse. But someone has what you consider an absurdly large amount of money. And if you can give them a reason, they will invest it. They got their money. People have money having all over. Like they put it in restaurants. They put it in houses. And a lot of these investments, the way that wealthy people make money isn't that every place they put their money, it turns to gold. It's they win more often than they lose. So if somebody invests in a restaurant, they're probably taking a 50-50 shot. They know there's a 50-50 shot. They're going to lose this money. So they put in money they're willing to lose. So if you can go to that person and say, hey, I've got this idea and I think it's pretty solid. And I think it's, a good 60% chance of success, maybe even 70, with your help, it could be 75. Partner with them. Oftentimes people have money. What they don't have is time. So if you can bring them an idea that's pretty solid and say, with your money and my time and energy, we can together do something. So there's always a way. And I'm talking about money because that's often the thing that people point to and say, I don't have that. But whatever it is, you can get it. You can get now. It may not make sense at that point in your life. I was talking to someone she's 63. She spent 20 years or 30 years in technology sales. And she was thinking about becoming a nurse. Her husband pointed out, like, do you want to spend 4 years and $50,000 to get your degree that you'll have by the time you're 66? And then you can start being a nurse. And she's like, it might not makes sense. There's not enough time left on the clock to do that. And also that's when she realized that wasn't her driving passion. If she'd always wanted to be a nurse, she'd figure out a way to make it work. But that test me is like, it seemed like a good idea. It's not really what I really want. But whatever it is you want to do, those resources exist. Once you decide to find them, you'll find them. And even if you have no idea, just start telling people. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your boss, tell your coworkers, tell people you meet in the grocery store. I got this idea and all I need to do is find someone who can code websites. And if I could find a partner and code a website, I could launch this thing. It's pretty cool. And you tell that to 10 people and someone's going to say, oh, I got a friend who's codes websites, just quit his job and is looking for something to do. Oh, really? It's amazing how short a time it takes once you're clear on what you're looking for. That's the hard part for me and Linda, probably for you too. Being clear on what you're looking for to find. But once you're clear on that, you're like, hey, I'm looking for this exact person who can do this thing for me. You can find them in a week. It's just a matter of letting people know because someone knows.
That's so valuable. And I think what I heard in all of that is that opportunity to look at our own mindset and ask those important questions to get the clarity to then execute the plans that are often very simple. They require hard work, dedication, commitment, but with the right mindset, the doors open to allow us to focus on that thing. You have shared many other things in this conversation. That was something that really resonated for me, and I think for friends who are listening as well. But this is one of my favorite parts of our podcast, where we get to hear from you that one thing, if you could offer our golden nugget to those who are listening, who are looking to launch their next great thing. What is it that you would share with them at this point?
So the most important thing is having a clear vision of what you want to do. Once you have that clear vision, everything else will follow from that. And that's the biggest challenge. And to realize that having a clear one target doesn't exclude everything else. It allows you to get the one thing. So a lot of people make the mistake of saying, I can help everybody. Well, that's great, but everybody is nobody. Nobody can refer you to everybody. So we're come up with a specific person you can help, a specific product you want to make first. And once you're zeroed on that one thing, then you can share that, I help 43-year-old women who have been working in the IT field for the last 15 or 16 years, who are between 5'4" and 5'7". So if you know anyone like that, that's who I can help. When you zero in that way, that's how you're going to build that initial kernel. And you can build from that. And then you can help the next group and the next group and the next group. But by having that very clear focus, that's the thing that's most powerful. And this is certainly, full disclosure, is definitely a something I have learned and something I am learning to execute myself, because the closer I get to clarity, the better it works for me. And the people who have succeeded have been clear. And this is a challenge I'm working on myself, but I think a lot of people do. But if you can do that, everything else will follow. And don't get distracted until you've done that. So don't start taking courses on social media, or how to write your book, or how to launch a rocket ship, or how to build a website, until you know exactly what you're trying to do, and then have everything follow that North Star guiding light.
And we often talk here about eliminating the can't by figuring out the how, so you can live your why. And I feel of the many people that we've interviewed, boy, you are living that. And I really appreciate also that message for us to hear, and for our listeners, whatever you are, you are. So lean into it. It might be your greatest asset. And I do think that a perceived weakness, if you can kind of embrace it, it often becomes a strength, or it's the catalyst to change and go after what you want. This has been a very helpful conversation for sure.
Absolutely.
I have been tasked with the most terrible part of our podcast, which is being the timekeeper, which we could talk for hours and hours. Maybe we need a follow-up podcast, but we are coming to the end of our time together. But before we go, what is next for you, Michael?
So the big thing I'm working on right now is launching my Inner Circle program, which people can find at guywhoknowsaguy.com/inner circle. And on that website, there's two buttons. One is sign up for the program, which I mentioned earlier in the podcast. And the other is sign up for a call, because people don't always want to sign up before they actually get to talk to me. And on that call, they could actually get 10 to 30 minutes with me, bringing their challenge to me, and I will bring my big treasure chest full of stuff. And whatever their challenge is in, as I mentioned, pretty much any field, I will work on that. And if on that call they say, I want more of this, they can join the inner circle, which, as I said, at this point, is a rocket ship in a plain brown paper wrapper. So it's not priced like it should be, which is the best time to get something before it has the marketing built around it. So if they go to guywhoknowsaguy.com/inner circle, then I'd love to have a conversation with them and learn about their challenges and see if there's some solutions in my treasure chest.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for this conversation today. And I will say, from someone who knows Michael in the publishing industry, we were publishing community magazines, he is super diligent about sticking to his goals. He's a big go-getter. He's got a big heart. He made a morning podcast for us specific to the publishing industry, and it was amazing. I listened to it every single day, and it started to really take off in the company. And so he's really got a big heart, and he just really wants to help people. And he's a spectacular human. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael. And it's been said, but we want you to definitely learn about Michael Whitehouse and go to www.guywhoknowsaguy.com.
Is that where we can find out about your morning motivational?
Yes. So you go to guywhoknowsaguy.com. There's a link to both the podcasts. There's a contact me button and a link to my book as well, The Guy Who Knows a Guy.
I should say a special thanks to our talented and skilled producer behind the scenes, Kathy Carswell.
And so it is left for me to say, go forth, be brave, live well, and do good, because it's Act 2.
You're on.
Act 2 You're On was brought to you by Act 2 Share Our Stage.
You can find us at a2yo.com and also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Please listen and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. You can support us using Patreon. Thanks for listening.